They really believe that we are heading towards a new computing platform where people will look at these mobile phones and go, just like my kids do about cassette tapes, what was that about? How did you get to the next track? Well, you had to fast forward through it? What?
I have the privilege to be French or not. I've been in this country for 23 years, so I'm British for my French friends and I am a frog for my English friends, or British friends as such. I've been in the games industry for 25 years, of which 23 in this country. So I'm what certain people would call a veteran.
Frank, tell us a little bit about yourself and your background.
I have been working for big companies, listed companies like Acclaim or Electronic Arts, smaller startups as well. And about 7 years ago, in 2014, I joined Codemasters as CEO, and I actually transformed the company, sold it to Electronic Arts a few months ago, and I have just left to be able to join the board of nDreams with great delight.
And I first met you, I think, when you were at EA Partners a long time ago. So I've tracked your career for quite a while, crossed over in a few places, and obviously watched the huge success you had at Codemasters in terms of taking them to IPO and then selling them to EA. And it looks like a phenomenal journey, a very exciting journey for you.
Yeah, it's been tough, as you know. When I joined the company was not performing well. It was in a difficult situation, and I think we refocused the business on what we were good at. It was a big lesson learned is, double down on where you're good. We focused on premium racing games, and with a lot of hard work and great development and great franchises, we managed to turn it around up to the point where we went public and made a couple of acquisitions before we were ourselves acquired by EA. So it's been an amazing experience. And I guess one of the key learning is focus is key. We focused on racing, as I just said. And this is kind of why I really like your business, because I think being the leader in a given category is always a very interesting position to be in. And you guys have started a long time ago, as you said. We've known each other for years. I think I actually knew you when you were at IDOS.
Yeah, I think so.
Long. And I just love the idea that you focused on VR. You are clearly one of the top developers in that category. And I certainly believe that VR is starting to show that it's a big business. We're going to see more hardware coming, which is going to continue to develop and expand the business. And I think being in the position you're in today means you're in a great spot going forward for the future and the growth of the business. So I'm excited about your being vertical, because I believe when you focus on something, you're better at it than the others.
I think it's probably fairly obvious to everybody why we invited Frank to be our chairman, given your background and everything you've done. Certainly from my point of view, it's super helpful having somebody with so much experience to challenge us. And actually, we've found that since you started, Frank. I think you're challenging all of the board's members, really keeping us on our toes, which is a great thing, because obviously we're growing pretty fast at the moment. We're in an exciting position where there's just so much work coming in. We've got so many opportunities. It's all about capacity at the moment. It's all about scaling as quickly as we can, which is exciting and but also it's a challenge, right? Growing fast and we have to make sure that we keep everything working really smoothly. We keep the culture, we keep the quality of everything we're doing as we scale the number of studios we have and the number of people we have. So that's part of the fun at the moment.
It is, and the industry, as we know, is growing so fast and so quickly. It's actually really difficult to focus. Just gaming software is about close to 200 billion. It's about, I think, 180. If you add the adjacent businesses like the platforms and the hardware, you're already at a business of 300 billion. it's massive. And if you see how quickly it's evolving, last week it was esports, the week before it was VR, now it's metaverse, it's NFTs. And there are so many experiences that technology allows you to develop for consumers that you need to be really focused and be very careful and not spreading yourself too thin. And again, this is why I really like you focusing on VR, because I think VR in itself is big enough to be a very successful company and very significant.
Absolutely. I think that's one of the reasons so many of us are passionate about being in the games industry, is it just changes so quickly. It's such a fast moving industry, as you say. And even within VR, there's so much changing all the time in terms of new headsets and new hardware and new technologies. Apple are working on AR and VR. When are they going to announce stuff? That's going to be a big moment for VR. That's going to be very exciting. So and there's a lot of M&A, there's a lot of craziness happening in the market at the moment, both in the game space and in VR too. Do you think post COVID, people have sort of woken up to how big the games industry is? Because there seems to be a lot of interest from investors and companies outside of games, maybe, who realize that the game space really is pretty enormous.
I have never seen so much money coming into gaming. I think it started probably with, certainly you had some sort of feeling when Fortnite became a phenomenon. I was touring, trying to float my company at the time. And there is not, I don't think I can remember one person who didn't have a child who was playing Fortnite. And that created a huge awareness about gaming, even bigger than it was already. And of course, with COVID, you've had plenty more time at home. A lot of people have been playing games. The numbers went up 30%. And it became the thing to do. And I think very importantly, people realize actually you could be playing games and be very social because you're playing with your friends. And you always had that image of gaming, you're in your bedroom and you're on your own. And I think people have realized that actually it's a very good way to connect with your friends and meet new friends. And that has been a big surprise.
Yeah, I think we're certainly seeing that social side, the people playing together, becoming more and more and more important, in games and in VR, as well. And that's a very strong trend, I think. I'm interested in your thoughts on the metaverse. When we started nDreams, for the first few years, we became the biggest publisher in this thing called PlayStation Home, which was a virtual world on the PS3. So we've got a lot of love and a lot of understanding of how much people like socializing in virtual worlds. And obviously with VR now, we confidentially, we did a very interesting prototype, a virtual world prototype a few years ago, and it's a space that we're really interested in as a company. Where do you think, when you hear the buzz of metaverse and everybody raising money and talking about it, what's your view of what a metaverse is, and is that going to be a big part of the future, do you think?
Yeah, I think metaverse is going to be huge. Everybody's got a different definition, but at the end of the day, it's all about stickiness and engaging consumers for as long as possible. So, being in 3D, being in a world where you can stay in and meet your friends, play different games, be in different places, that's really what a number of companies are trying to do. So there are games companies doing it, Roblox and Fortnite and loads of the sandbox. And then you've got more platform companies like Facebook also trying to retain their consumers. It's not through gaming at this point, but at some point, gaming is, as we know, the key element of it, because that's what is the most sticky for consumers. Consumers always come back to gaming because they want an activity. So what I think the metaverse is kind of a web in 3D with your friends. I think the game is absolutely crucial to it because that's the stickiest element of anything interactive. And that's what's going to make a metaverse successful. And if you look at Roblox and the size of this, it is a company with one game worth 80 billion. This is a company that is, 10 years old, maybe. And they are bigger than Activision or Electronic Arts, who've been around for 35, 40 years. It just shows you the power of the metaverse, the power of user-generated content, where you build a platform where you can let consumer build their own content, eventually sell it. it is definitely the future, and there's a reason why so much money, so many investors are coming to it and excited. And we talk about NFTs. You know, once you've got a metaverse, NFTs is a natural. You're going to be able to buy virtual items, sell them, and I think that it's going to be worth trillions.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. And certainly one thing we're seeing with our conversations with all the big technology companies is that as part of that, they really believe that we are heading towards a new computing platform where people will look at these mobile phones and go, just like my kids do about cassette tapes, you know, what was that about? How did you get to the next track? Well, you had to fast forward through it? You know, what? Oh,
Let alone when I mention fax or telex.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And they're convinced that these will go the same way. Kids will go, you used to touch something with your finger and, you know, on glass, isn't that really dirty? Didn't you get food everywhere? That's so weird. You know, and I think that's where we're going to get to. It will be, you know, certainly we see the vision that these tech companies absolutely believe is going to happen, where everyone is wearing glasses, you know, much like the three of you are today, actually, the same size, the same shape, but things are overlaid in the real world in AR, and you know, you press a button and they're opaque and you lose yourself in a magical, you know, virtual reality world. And there's certainly we're moving there really fast, which is exciting for me. You know, even in AR, which is where things are displayed on top of the real world. Niantic, you know, one of the leaders in this space, I think just raised another 300 million today on a valuation.
On a 9 billion valuation.
9 billion, yeah, which wasn't bad. To try and create the metaverse of the real world. The idea being that, you know, everywhere in the real world there are digital things around it. So maybe in my office where I am today, you know, I could have a digital clock, you know, with a crocodile swimming around above me and all sorts of stuff that I could place in here, and anybody with AR glasses coming in would see that. You know, it would be matched to the real world. So it's a fascinating space. It really is, and one that's moving so fast.
You know, someone recently made a comment saying, you know, the games business is it's growing, and it's evolving faster than it ever has, and it's never going to be that slow again. Yeah. And I thought it was a very smart way of putting it, because I find it going faster and faster and faster. The speed of change is overwhelming, and this is where it's really important to keep on to what it is you're good at and what you know, because it is so easy to be distracted by so many possibilities. So it's amazing. I mean, every day you see more money coming in, and I have never seen so much money. And the money coming in is not just coming from the usual VCs and now it's coming from people who've never been in games before. But it doesn't matter if there's some game in it, and if you could use the word VR or metaverse or esports or NFTs, it's getting everybody so excited. And I guess we now in a generation where, you know, it's three generations of gamers, and those who were gamers only 30 years ago are now the one with the money, and they've got the kids, and nobody's scared of games like they were many years ago. It's gone. That scary's gone, and it makes a huge difference.
And what are your views on streaming? You know, it seems to me that in the future, the idea of owning a console that goes out of date over a few years and downloading stuff and waiting for it to download and then doing updates and patches and all that kind of stuff that we do now is going to be, you know, going to go into the dark ages. Do you think, because we've been talking for a while in the games industry about streaming games coming, and to a certain extent they are with Stadia and PlayStation Now and some of the Xbox services, but do you think ultimately games will be streamed from the cloud, and that actually physically owning a copy or downloading a copy to a hard drive is something you're just not going to do anymore?
You would think so. I mean, I think it's a question of when rather than if. I think we all know that, you know, the concept of streaming is working very well on TV. It's more difficult on gaming because you have to be multiplayer, and you can't afford to have any delays. So I think it will take time. You need 5G to be installed. The technology need to improve, but it's pretty obvious. And if you talk to anyone, most people in the industry that I know don't actually believe there's going to be another generation of console. It will be all streaming.
Yeah.
So they came out a couple of years ago, and you know, usual cycle is about 7 years. So I think within the next 5 years, between the improvement of the infrastructure and the improvement on technology, there'll be a lot of streaming, yes, and potentially subscription that comes with it.
Yeah, I think so. And I think for us in VR, that's really exciting because you can imagine that when VR is streamable, over 5G, and you don't need CPUs and GPUs and memory and battery, huge batteries and all the other stuff that you kind of need to have the stuff inside the headset, when it's just streaming from a server in, your local city, that suddenly makes VR headsets so much lighter and AR and so much cheaper and so much easier to produce. So, that could be an interesting inflection point for VR as well.
Well, and you've seen it with Oculus, with Quest 2, when suddenly you're not attached to a machine.
Yeah.
The growth of Quest 2 has been phenomenal. And, again, the next step, which is going to be even better hardware and lighter, you should get another big step forward. So I think we're really close to seeing VR take off. I would predict that in 23, with the arrival of the new Sony headset, a big push from them and more push from other hardware manufacturer, we're going to start seeing a mass market, certainly a lot more mass market than it is today.
Yeah, certainly that's the way we see it. The Quest 2 has done phenomenally. The Quest and the Quest 2 have done phenomenally well. They're such great form factors, the ability just to stick the headset on and it just works wherever you are. You press the power button and you're in. You don't have to set stuff up. You don't have to charge controllers. You don't have to unplug anything. It's just such a great headset and works so well and at a great price as well. I think Oculus / Meta / Facebook have done a brilliant job with that and are really committed to pushing this forward and driving it.
If you think about Facebook strategy, they bought Oculus, 6, 7 years ago? I can't even remember. But at the time, we're like, what? Why are they buying hardware? Why are they buying something so hardcore at the time? I actually think that they knew all along they were going to build a metaverse. They know full well that immersion is the name of the game for a metaverse and that VR will give you the ultimate immersion. And I actually think they're after Apple and the telephone and telecom companies, and they want to be the new telephone.
Yeah,
I think they will replace telephones. They've got WhatsApp, they've got Instagram, they've got all it takes now to be the new telephone 2.0.
Yeah.
That's why they're going after Apple. That's why they're going after telecom companies, and that's why they're building hardware and they've got this infrastructure. It makes sense when you think of it.
Yeah, it's going to be so exciting. And certainly all the other big tech companies are, even if they haven't announced anything, very, very excited and, keeping a close eye on this space. So I think, it won't ultimately just be Sony and Oculus. They're obviously HTC have done a great job and there's some other fantastic headsets. Interesting that ByteDance, the guys who own TikTok, bought Pico, phenomenally great Chinese headset company. And, no doubt will be spreading that around the world as well. And that's going to be exciting competition. I think you're just going to see more and more players coming in. And then as soon as Apple finally reveal, what they've been working on for many, many years now behind closed doors, I think it's going to be a really exciting time, as you say, as we really do move towards mass market, and that's going to be great. What's exciting is that we're really pushing and continuing to be seen, we hope, as the highest quality VR developer. Something I learned from Codemasters, actually. That was my first ever job, was at Codemasters a very long time ago. And I was there before they did any racing games. And I remember being in the game design prototyping team where we came up with our first racing prototype. It was a little top-down 2D physics thing to rally to try and get it working. And from that point, Codemasters, who I've always admired hugely, focused on racing and being the best in the world at it, and they were phenomenally good. And certainly that's something we try to aspire to, is to be the best VR game developer and publisher in the world. And we're working really hard to make sure every game we do is better than the last one. I'm really proud of Shooty Fruity, and Phantom was phenomenal, and has done really well. Frax come out, brilliant reviews. Far Cry, we're getting better all the time, and the team's getting better, and that's the most exciting thing for me, I think.
For those who haven't played Far Cry at the Wembley place, the VR place.
Yes.
I advise it strongly. It's so much fun. I played it with you a few weeks ago and I absolutely loved it. It's amazing once you're in there and you're carrying your gun, and it's like, oh wow, this is like absolutely amazing experience. I would advise everyone to try it. And frankly, there's absolutely no risk at all. You can't be shot, which is great.
That's
But
true.
you touched on something quite important earlier. You talked about being the best developer, and I do think that it's been one of the major shifts in the industry where the power is now with developers. It used to be with distributors many years ago, when it was box business, where you had to go into retail. It became a publisher's business. And really now, the disintermediation of the middleman makes developers the real value. And you see it in the valuation of the companies. It's all about the people who can create the content, and the value is there. So this is why I'm excited, and I'm always pushing towards development, because if you could create content and create the experiences, nothing stops you now. You can go directly, you publish your own games, and you could not have done that before it was all digital only a few years ago. And that's made a big difference as well. And also with middleware such as Unreal or Unity, you can now make a game for a much more reasonable amount of money, and you don't need to create your own engine. You don't need to spend years on technology. So what you're seeing as a result of that, a lot of very talented people create their games from their back bedrooms. I mean, I'm not saying they're all from their bedrooms, but you see quite a lot of people doing games with not that much money.
Yep.
And it's amazing how much that has created an exciting industry with lots of newcomers. And if you look at 10 years ago, when you had a unicorn, you were like, oh my God, there's a company that's worth $1 billion. Now, I mean, last year alone, you had 18 unicorns. This year, we're probably already at 2025. So that's the ability to develop game through middleware, and having creative talent doing it themselves, and being able to create huge companies. And that creativity is fabulous, because it's, it feeds the system, it feeds the ecosystem. Yep. And it never stops. Every day you look and somebody's raising money for more money. It's crazy. You mentioned Niantic this morning. Yesterday was Overwolf. The day before was, Sandbox. And the day before was Sorare raising money from SoftBank on a value of 4.3 billion. This is just amazing.
Yeah, it's quite vibrant, isn't it? And actually, I think for us, it's exciting because in terms of our development teams here, we're working on bigger, more ambitious, games all the time on really exciting IP, whether that's our own original IP or massive, film and TV IP. But equally, we're doing third-party publishing now. So what we've got is a team that are searching out there for those 2 or 3 people in their bedroom doing something amazing, and we're helping them fund the games and bring them to market and publishing them. In fact, our first game from our third-party publishing team called Little Cities is out, early next year. It's from a 2-man team, in the north of England, who are phenomenal. It's a great little city builder. It's fantastic. And what's nice for us is we can look out there and try and turn over all of these, fantastic games and find the very best indie titles to help and publish and support, whilst we're also developing big original IPs and film IPs and things at the same time. So it's a nice balance, actually. And I think we're one of the first companies in VR to go into that space and trying to do, I think, what Team 17 have done very well in the traditional game space, which is, finding great indie games and publishing and supporting those developers. And that's what we're trying to do in VR.
Yeah. And Devolver's just shown the same thing. They could be very successful with very small budgets. So you've got the best of both worlds in a way, because you can go and work with smaller developers and help them be more successful because of what you've learned, but you're also in the position where, having the experience you have, you can help those bigger developers who don't always have the resources. They can't always focus on VR the way you do it, and they would rather come to a safe pair of hands that can produce quality games, rather than take the risk to put their own resources or hire people they don't trust. So you can work with the smallest and you can work with the biggest. Hey, what can be better?
Absolutely. And actually, that was one of the questions we got when we first, got investment. Well, when VR gets big, surely Activision and Ubisoft and EA will just do it themselves. And actually, ironically, now that they are really interested in getting to space, they've got no capacity. They've got no teams. They've got no staff. They're struggling to hire enough people to do Call of Duty and FIFA and all of the other big games because there's so much demand for staff in the industry. So, they've got nobody free to go put in VR. So actually, we're having some great conversations with those guys about, what they're doing. And I think it's a really exciting point in VR as well and in the games industry. And I just can't tell you how excited I am about the future. It's lots of stuff happening here, which is going to be really, really exciting over the next few months, I think.
Yeah, I mean, look, at Codemasters, we couldn't do VR internally either. We did it externally.
Yeah.
And if you're happy with your developer, and I think what you're going to see going forward is, as you become known for your quality and what it is you do, you'll be able to command much better deals. Because originally you say, oh, it's going to be work for hire and you get paid for a service. But I think it's come to a point where you bring so much to a game by bringing know-how, features, and things that they wouldn't be able to do. You should be able to command some royalties now, which is great. It means that it's not like your own IP, but if it's a huge success that you're working and you stand behind, you could make a lot of money from it as well. It's no longer limited to just a work for hire business.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, I just wanted to finish by talking about Mercia, actually. So you mentioned Facebook buying Oculus all those years ago. I actually got investment from Mercia before that point. I remember finalizing the investment, and actually that was announced, I think, a week before all the contracts were signed. So I think Mercia were quite happy. It was quite a good sign. But it just shows how forward thinking they were at the time. And actually, I just wanted to say to everybody just how fantastic that that relationship has been so far. They've been incredibly supportive to us over the years, both from sort of seed investment through Series A, helping us scale and grow, and being really smart and wise in terms of advice on our board. So it's been a really good journey with Mercia so far, and I've enjoyed every minute of it. I don't think we really lucked out finding them as an investor, to be honest with you.